You're there for the action. You know, I
Right.
was with a serious crew of guys that was very violent that night. Two of us went in there. The man raised his hands to his wife, and we helped out the family. I was raised around a lot of violence. A lot of people got killed. This is the type of thing that we do. You know,
Yeah.
if I get undressed and find a liar, I can't clip him. Because Whitey was probably one of the most dangerous guys in Boston. I didn't have too many feelings.
So, Bobby, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome to the Real Mob. I want to ask you a bunch of questions about your life in the mob, in the mafia. How did you start your life in the mob? Where did you grow up? Tell me the early years of your life.
All right, well, my father was a gangster his whole life. I was born in the north end of Boston, which is Boston's Little Italy, and headquarters for La Cosa Nostra. So Jerry and Julu was in there. He was the underboss of the reign of Patriarca, the Patriarca family. All the capos and soldiers were in there, most of them. You know, so it was headquarters there at the time. Now my mother and father got divorced when I was a young age. My mother moved from the north end to East Boston, and she got remarried, and my father also got remarried. And my father Santo, uh, my stepfather, was also had one foot in the life. He was a loan shark, bookmaker, you know, the whole gamut. Social clubs, he did the whole
Sure.
thing. A tough guy, you know, in his younger
Right.
days. Praise God, he's still alive, my father.
Oh,
Good guy,
wow.
son.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, yeah. He's gonna be what's today's date? Yeah, a few more days he'll be 81. God bless him.
Oh,
You
wow.
know.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah. So I grew up around wise guys my whole life. I grew up around the life. 11 years old, 12 years old, I went to work for Rome Vending, which was run by Ronnie Romanowski, who was a gangster with the Angiulo family. And of course, he was the front guy for the Angiulos. So I'm 11, 12 years old. I'm making like $50 a week. I'm taking home. And I went to work every day after school. And in the course, even that, when I was a kid, you know, it was Bobby Luisi's son, my father. And I was treated well and, you know, going to all the social clubs, doing all the pinball machines and the money machines, the cigarette machines. You know, I was always around it. Just grew up in these social clubs.
When were you actually conscious of the fact that this is the mob, the mafia, this is what I've seen on TV, etc.?
Well, about 16 years old, I knew what it was. You know, I didn't know the depth of it, but about 16 years old, I moved back in the North End in my father's building. And we had a Big Ten family building on Michelangelo Street over there. And the family still owns most of the street there today. And I was 16 years old. I had an apartment. I quit school. I was working carpentry. And I was also hanging around with the wise guys. So I'd go into the pizza joints or whatever restaurants they had because my father was with them, you know, and I felt at that age they were starting to groom me a little, you
Sure.
know, at
Sure.
that point. And then I started to see the life and what was going on with it, you know, and I would say about 17, 18 years old, I really liked being a carpenter. I really wanted to be a carpenter and a builder and a developer. So I was
Right.
going more towards that than the mob. I mean, I
Sure.
didn't really be in the mob. My father was a gangster, well respected. My family, the Luisi family, you know, so it wasn't something that I had to chase after. The other
Sure.
part of my family, the Luisi family, we were all contractors, you know, so I went and I chased that. And I think I was 20 years old. I got a builder's license and my first one, second one at 23. Ended up on Martha's Vineyard, specking homes down there. I maybe built 50, 100 homes down there. More like a second in command at Boston was Larry Bione, or Larry Zanino. He was a cop of the Jean in the family.
Sure.
I used to go into the Bellinopoli on Hanover Street, which is a pizza restaurant joint that was owned by Johnny Ciccardi, and he was one of his soldiers. And Ralphie Chong, he was a big name up there. Ralph used to hang in there. He was one of Larry's soldiers. That was their little crew. There were 3 different capos, just in the not that.
Right.
Jerry was on Prince Street. Larry Bione's crew was on Hanover Street. Sammy Granito's crew was down the street on Hanover and Commercial. You know, so there was a lot of wise guys around then. But the most I was around was Johnny Ciccardi, Richie Gambale, Ralphie Chong, Matina, and Larry Bione. Now, when I was around and we'd be in the pizza joint, to me and my cousins would hang around in there, obviously, you know. We try to dress the best we could every day, hang around with these guys. And when Larry Bione walked in, everybody got an attention. He was the man, you know. And he was the first guy, not that I wanted to emulate, but the first guy that I really looked up to say, wow, you know, you see how people respect this guy, how they fear this guy. You know, this guy really got it going on. So Larry probably was my first biggest impression in a leadership role. But the other guys, Richie and Johnny just passed away recently. God bless his soul. I know him since I was a kid. I believe Ralphie Chong's gone now too. And these were the first guys that were any type of an influence to me. So you have to remember, when I was working for the vending company, I met everybody, you know. Social clubs and everything. You know?
Sure. Okay. So if you were to compare Larry to someone from the movies, who would you, like, if you look at all the mob movies, who would you compare him to?
Kind of like what I ended up being myself. I would say Sonny in the Bronx Tale.
I was actually just thinking that. Running
his crew, because that's what I ended up doing myself, you know. And I would fasten him more to that, I think. That type of a character. You know, Larry was scared, sharp, dangerous, you know.
Sure. So when did you actually see your first real bit of serious violence in the mob? Because there's a lot of violence in the mob life. When was your first experience of seeing violence or inflicting violence on someone? Tell me about that.
Well, you know, I thought a great guy even before I got involved, but I seen a lot of violence before I even got involved with the mob.
Right.
I was asked a lot of favors just because I was Bobby Luisi's son, and I took care of a lot of things myself. There were incidents I went at people's homes, and you know, one time we left a guy just about dead on the floor. I'll talk about that because we didn't kill him, but that was very violent that night. 2 of us went in there. The man raised his hands to his wife, and we helped out the family.
Sure.
This is the type of thing that we do. You know?
Yeah.
And that was before I was even really running on the street. You know, this is just, I grew up with violence.
So clearly you were desensitized to the violence on the street. So I guess you didn't have many emotions when it came to actually, you know, if someone had to take a beating, you'd do it, right? Or someone had to be taken out of the scene, you'd do it.
You know, I see, you know, from my childhood and what I saw growing up, what I believed of the life, even though I wasn't in it at the time when I was a kid. Like I said, I was raised around a lot of violence. Thank God, you know, I come from a peaceful home, you know, but besides that, on the street every day. And I don't know, it's just the way that I learned in life. You know, I realized later as I went on, like Cosa Nostra, that I didn't have too many feelings. I was desensitized from everything. I didn't care about death. I didn't care about life. I cared about nothing. We care about our kids in that life and our parents and our, you know, immediate family. Other than that, that didn't bother me. I didn't care either way. You know, and that's what made me strive and get to where I went to.
Sure.
That ladder.
So, Bobby, tell me about Whitey Bulger, because he was a big character in Boston, notorious character, and we've heard a lot about him from various sources. But did you ever meet Whitey Bulger, or was he kind of a little bit before your time, or did you have any interactions? Or
he was more my father's age. Sure. But you gotta remember, you know, he wasn't Italian.
Yeah.
We don't look at him as a boss. I mean, Whitey had a dangerous crew. Stevie Flemmi,
Mm.
but you got to realize in Whitey's crew was a lot of Italians. Frank Salemi, Stevie Flemmi, the Monterano brothers.
Yeah.
And eventually, Whitey being an informant for all those years was wiping these guys out one by one, using the feds to do that.
Sure.
Because Whitey was probably one of the most dangerous guys in Boston at one point. There was no doubt about that. But it's the way he went about it. Because of Connolly and the FBI looking for Whitey, they made him, some people still call him that he was a big boss up here. He wasn't. He had a crew in South Boston. One time he was part of the Winter Hill gang in Somerville. But Howie Winters and the Monterano's, they're always with the Italians.
Sure.
As they started wiping out the Italians and Jerry and Giulio got picked up and Larry and all these guys. And we know that was from him and Stevie Flemmi helping the feds put a bug into the doghouse on Prince Street in Jerry's club. He wasn't the guy that everybody thinks he is.
Sure.
He really wasn't. He was a bad guy. He had a crew, very dangerous. I'm not taking that from Whitey. But being an Italian and being La Cosa Nostra, he meant nothing to me.
Sure. I mean, he went under the radar for a long time, obviously because he had, guys in the FBI working with him. Didn't Jerry Angela and all those guys think that, hang on a second, we're all getting pinched over here. How come this guy's not taking any pinches? What's going on? Did they ever get an inkling that something's not right here? Maybe he's throwing us under the bus. Maybe he's working for the feds. Didn't that ever occur to those guys?
I want to go back to the 80s. And I remember sitting in the Velinopoli with Johnny Ciccardi. He was a main guy in the Patriarca family. And Johnny telling me something about Whitey that he thought he was no good. And this was back in the 80s.
Right.
But then I heard a lot of guys used to call Whitey looking for info.
Right.
So who knows really what was going on? Maybe they didn't realize the extent of how deep he was in with them. But they knew he had Connolly around him. A lot of guys knew that. Thank God when I came back up in the 90s, because in the 80s I was mostly down the vineyard, away from everything. When I came back up in the 90s, he was old, he wasn't around, and obviously had no say over what we were doing. And then they ended up taking off in the mid-90s, him, Frankie, and Steve Flemmi. But they ended up catching both Frank and Steve in the 90s. And when I went to Plymouth, is the first time I met Stevie Flemmi, his partner.
Right.
We were in the same club together. But I already knew he was an informant. Frankie Salemi was protecting him. And I had to protect Frankie's interest, because at one time I was proposed in his family. So I minded my business like everybody else did, and I walked away from him. That kind of turned my stomach a little. But Whitey was a bad guy. You can't take that from him. I think I more saw weakness in people. I want to put it that way. I saw potential for a problem with some people. And I made some bad calls. A lot of guys ratted on me when I was in the street before I got arrested. I made some bad calls with some people. And I had a lot of big earners with me that, they just didn't want to do time, most of them, It's hard to judge. It really is. Like I said, what I was learned to do, and I learned from the old timers, was to find the weakness in people.
Sure.
And we were taught that sometimes to exploit it, if we could, or to see if we just don't want this guy around us. I'll tell you a story. You know about the 90s in Boston, we had a war up there.
Yeah.
And there were 4 different factions running around on the street. We were warring with 3 of them. A guy comes to me. He says, Bobby, I'm not going to say names. I think the guy's dead, but I don't want to say names. I called the kid Pat. Pat comes to me and says to me, I want to go clip this guy. can I go clip this guy? I says, listen, you can go do whatever you want, but I'm not giving you permission. Because if I give you permission, then you're bound to me. And I don't want that with you. I said, do you understand that? I told him. So whatever you do, my friend, go do it on your own. I knew he was weak. You understand? I felt that in him.
Sure.
And I wasn't going to let him drag me down. You know? And I'll tell you, there were guys that I thought were stronger than me that ended up flipping. So that's a really hard question to ask. But like I said, not with the flipping thing, but with weakness at people, I thought it was pretty good with that. They trained me right with that.
And what happened to the guy that asked you for permission? Did he actually go ahead and do what he was asking you permission for?
He didn't, because he knew I wasn't going to back him up. And there was no reason for him to step any further, I believe.
Sure.
You know, these guys, at that time in the 90s, too, a lot of them wanted to get straightened out. So they felt if they did that piece of work for me, that eventually, you know, they'd probably come in with me, you know. But this wasn't a guy I wanted in my crew. Just didn't want him in my crew.
So, Bobby, you rose through the ranks of the underworld. When was it that you made the transition from kind of a street guy to someone to be seriously respected? When was that? When did that transition happen? How did it happen? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, but I do have to be careful about that.
Sure.
Talking about that, but like I said, you know, the war broke out and got really heavy about 93, and a lot of people got killed. You know, right. I was with a serious crew of guys. They were worse than me. Believe me, I was the least out of all of them. You know, but I had that aim. I was up front with a lot of it, and that started building my reputation during the wartime. And as the war was going on, I was also building my family and my crew and my empire at the time.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it got serious, and people know if I was coming after them, they'd have to worry. Not even about me, but the guys that were around me. You know, that's how their life is.
And when you're at war, when you're hunting down, you know, rival factions in a family, what's going through your head when you're in that car, when you're in a car full of guys that have loaded shotguns? What's going through your head right at that point?
You know, it's amazing. We were talking about that the other night. I was talking with, because I still have a guy from my crew, Paul Tanzo. He's my co-host on the show, you know. And I can't believe the things we did and got away with. That we're driving around in hot boxes with shotguns, pistols, and we're going laying on people, looking for people. And you think about now how insane that was. But like I said, we had no care. Our lives were at one time, maybe we'll make it to 40 or we'll be in prison for the rest of our lives. It's going to be one or the other. So that was our thought every day when we went out of the house. You know, they try to keep a few times attempts on my life, obviously, you know, and I'm still here, praise God, you know, that's God's will. But the thing here is that you got a callous over your heart. You really believe, and I was talking to this about Mike Francese on my show the other day. You really, we really believe we were soldiers and we were doing the right thing. And this was our cause and this is what had to be done. And we know these men are going to come and kill us if we don't come, you know, go and kill them. And it's just a state of mind that you get and you don't care anymore. I guess we just didn't care.
And when you were in that prime of your life in terms of your gangster life, did you ever fear anything? I know you were in a mindset of it's kill or be killed, but did you fear anything other than, did you ever fear that, like law enforcement? Did you ever fear of going to jail? Did you ever fear of your family getting hurt or anything like that when you were in that life?
Well, let me tell you something about fear and how fear works. You have to be able to control it and overcome it. If you don't, then you might as well just roll up in a ball and go in the closet. Any man that sits here and tell you he's not afraid, there's really something wrong with him. You know, so let's put that out on the table. But fear drove me. I don't know if you can understand that, but it drove me.
Right.
It was just another thing that had to be conquered. Listen, I had to come out of my house every day with a gun on my back and look over my shoulder when I got in my car. This was every day, you know? You had to worry where you talked, if my apartment was bugged, if my house was bugged, if my office was, every day you had to worry. There was
Did,
always something.
didn't you actually think that? Did you ever have moments when you were in that life thinking, I have to look over my shoulder, I can't go to sleep at night, I can't rest easy. What's the point of all this? Is it worth it? Did you ever think of that type of thing when you were in the life?
Not when I was climbing the ladder, no.
Right.
I'll be honest with you.
Sure.
No, no, I didn't think like that.
So the rewards were worth the
In that
sleepless
life,
nights. Yeah.
in that life, in that
Sure.
life. You
And
know?
did you ever think that you're going to have longevity in life, or did you think that, well, I might have 5 years, 10 years, 15 at most? Did you
Well,
ever
like
have
I
a
said
longevity?
earlier, we were happy to live till 40.
Sure.
And I was in my 30s. So what can that tell
Right.
you? You know, I got a good 10-year run on this street. That was it, you know. And I'm surprised I got that long out of it, coming out of a war.
But if you think to yourself, okay, well, I've got 5, 10 years on the streets, doesn't that in itself think, well, is it worth it? Because okay, you might party and whatever, but at the end of the day, you got 10 years, 15 years of having to look over your shoulder, and then you probably go to jail. God forbid, you'll die in the streets. You don't ever kind of think of the logic, thinking that, well, why not have a full, proper life with freedom, not having to look over your shoulder? Did you ever think that, oh, let's just throw this whole
Well,
thing in?
you know, at that point, we were so deep in it. It's like a
Sure.
soldier getting in the trench. The only thing I know how to do is shoot my way out of this. You know, that's the only
Sure.
thought that you really have. And that's every facet of that life, not just the wall pod and shooting people, but in every facet of that life. You
Sure.
have to have that discipline and that same mental thought, because if you don't, you're not going to make it, you know? And when we were in it, we loved it. We
Sure.
loved the life when we were in it.
What, if I was to ask you what were the best bits of the life, could you tell me from your perspective what you enjoyed in that life?
What I enjoyed the most being in that life, at the end, you know, you're kind of like a celebrity in your neighborhood. You know, you pull up to a restaurant, 5 people want to park your car. They open the doors, there's a table ready for you. It's like being a movie star. Those parts were the nice parts. That's what people see in these movies and glamorize.
Sure.
They don't know what's behind it, but they glamorize what they see or what they think the life is about. And yeah, I love that. I love the women. You know, I love the good times with my friends. I love going and eat. I love being a gangster. I'm not
Right.
gonna lie, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
In
And we
your
see
own mind,
that
you think you're a rock star.
you're actually a very interesting person in that life because you grew up in Boston, but then somehow you transitioned to the Philly mob. Can you tell me a little bit how that transition happened and what led up to that?
Well, there was a capo. I was a proposed member in the Patriarca family, and I had a little incident with a capo in the family. At that point, I knew that I was going to get made. If you know the rules and the laws of La Cosa Nostra, when a guy gets made, not specifically in Boston and Philadelphia, it's more where I'm out, but they used to call it pass a paper around. Used to go to the families. This way, if anybody had any dirt on the guy, they could come up and say, hey, you know, this guy did this and this. He doesn't deserve to be in the life a friend of us.
Sure.
Now, when I had the beef with the capo, I knew that I was going to get knocked down right away. I
Right.
knew that was going to happen. There was a lot of frustration with them because I had the biggest crew. I was making the money. And because I planted flags in every neighborhood, you know, because in my mind, I wanted the brass ring too. And they knew that. So how do you give a button to a guy that you can't control? So I knew that wasn't going to happen. So we reached out in New York. A friend went to Peter Gotti. And because although there's no state commission, there's still rules. And Peter sent me a message back. Peter Gotti sent a message back to me saying, tell Bobby, because of our rules, I can't do anything with him. And then I ended up going and meet Ralph Natale and Joey Molina down in Philadelphia. And I'll tell you, we bonded right away, and I got proposed in that family, and shortly after they made me.
Tell me about your first meeting with Ralph Natale, who was the boss of well, let me say boss, front boss.
Yeah, front guy.
Front guy. That's right. And Joey Molina was the real power at that time in Philadelphia.
Yes, he was.
And Joey, just a little quick background on Joey Molina. His father was a serious mobster with Nicky Scarfo, and he was kind of born into the mob. And after Scarfo went away, there was a bit of a war. In fact, the wars never stopped in Philadelphia. The wars there was one war after another, right? So when Scarfo went away, Molino and John Stanford were kind of shooting it out between themselves, and then Stanford went away, and Joey Molino took control of Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me about your first meeting with Ralph Natale and Joey Molina, and what were your impressions of those guys when you met them?
When I first met Ralph, there was a guy up around us. He was in my crew. He passed away now, so I'll say his name, Frankie Rossi. Serious guy, Frankie. He was in prison with Ralph Natale. They became close friends. When Frankie comes home, he's in my crew. He knows what's going on now at this point that I'm reaching out. He wants me to go see Ralphie. So long story short, we got in the car. Frankie set the appointment up. We went to Cherry Hill to the pub, and I met Ralph Natale down there. Now, I heard a lot of great things about Ralph from a lot of different people, how he handled himself in prison and what type of man he was. And my first meeting with him, I really liked Ralph. We got along great together. After that, I think I had one more meeting with him. And then I ended up meeting Georgie Borghese, who was a capo in the family, down in Delaware. And Joey took me in. Georgie ended up taking me to Joey and meeting all the guys. So there was like 6 months of going back and forth and coming up to Boston, me going to Philly and making this alliance with each other before they actually took me in the family. We went and got a hotel room because, there was, secretive as possible. And the whole ceremony lasted about 45 minutes for the both of us together. And after that, we went out drinking. Yeah, they pricked my finger and, we burned what we had to burn and we did all that, And to me, I felt it was an honor at the time, and Joey straightened me out.
Is it true that when you get made in the ceremony, they ask you, do you know why you're here? And you should answer. It's kind of a running joke. Is this true? And you have to answer no. Is that true? Or
Yeah, that is true. Because if you were aware of what was happening, then someone else could be. They just want to protect that.
Sure.
You're not supposed to know.
Right. Okay. But you did know, obviously.
Of course I did. I didn't know what day or when it was coming, but when I was down in Philly, I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know when though. Mm-hmm. Then I was just, look, come on, let's go in the car, and that's how that was done. Yeah.
When you were taken in the car to the ceremony, did any thoughts of Joe Pesci and Goodfellas run through your mind at that point?
No, I got to tell you, no, it didn't. I'm going to tell you why. The Philly guys, they're a great bunch of guys down there. If there was a plot from back home and Joey was going to take care of the problem for them, it would have just happened. But no, I didn't think about that. Well, could have that been a possibility? Yeah, that could have been. But Joey and Georgie, they're not about that. Don't get me wrong. You know how vicious they are. I'm not saying that, but
yeah.
They wouldn't have went through that trouble to take care of me. I'll put it that way.
Right. And let me ask you a question here. on the same lines, let's say, for example, you think you may possibly be in danger, possibly, but you're not sure. And some friends pull up outside your house, say, hey, we're going to, let's say, for example, if you've seen Sopranos, when they say to Pussy, they say to him, look, we're going to go see a boat. And he's not sure if they know he's a rat, but he's like, well, you know what? I'll take my chances. I'll go along, right? And he thinks nothing of it. And we all know what happens in the end, you know? He's killed.
Right.
Was there ever a point where you thought, hang on, I'm meeting these guys and they might have other things, you know, planned for me?
Absolutely.
And what goes through your mind when that happens? Could you tell me a situation like that? Or
Well, again, you know, things happen up here during the war. Even friends started fighting with each other. And it was tough to see who you could trust and who you couldn't trust. And so at that point, I was so shielded by all my men that it would have been hard for anybody to get to me to get me alone. My dear friends, I still talk with a few of them. They were capos and soldiers in the Patriarca family. I'm not going to mention names because they asked me not to mention them on the show.
Sure.
And even with them, we used to fight like we were brothers. But then again, you never know. You know, I love those guys, and I know they love me, but we used to fight, you know, and you just don't know. And a lot of times you don't know what's coming.
Sure.
If you got a dirty stomach,
yeah,
like Pussy had,
yeah,
they pick that right up. They know.
yeah,
They pick that right up. That's one of the instincts that you have in that life,
you
know. And there's a few guys that I know, May guys still, you know, used to be in my position, or you know, soldiers, and they've told me about the sit downs they had to go to and weren't sure if they were going to walk out. You know, and this happens in that life.
Sure.
I was just a little more cautious than that. I wasn't going to let anybody take me as a fool.
Sure.
You know, I know a lot of people wanted to take me out. So.
Sure. Because, I mean, like, an example that springs to mind is Sonny Black in the Bonanno family. When this whole Donnie Brasco saga happened, and it all came out that Donnie Brasco was an agent, an FBI agent, that Sonny Black was on the chopping block basically because he introduced him to everyone. He was one of the ones that introduced him to the Bonanos, etc. Yeah. And he knew that when the game was up, and when he was sent for, he knew that he wasn't walking out.
Yeah.
Do you have you heard any stories like that from Philly crew, or any stories of that like that? The people
I know a few things, and I don't want to. I can't talk about them, but it's happened both in Boston and Philadelphia. But you know, a man's man like Sonny Black is going to go. He's going to go. You know, because you know why? That's his whole life. That's all he believed in. So you go and taking the chance. Maybe you can talk your way out of it. Maybe they'll change their mind. Maybe you're not sure what they're going to do. But again, Sonny Black knew he had that in his stomach. You know, he knew it was time to be up. You know, they didn't kill Lefty. Lefty died in prison of cancer.
But they were going to kill Lefty, right?
Probably. He ended up dying in prison. But, you know, he brought him in. He introduced him to bosses in the family. He exposed the whole family because of what he did.
That's right.
He and Lefty's associate, he would have been on their side. But Sonny Black pulled him in. And that's the problem. Did Sonny deserve it? In the life, yes. In life itself, no, nobody deserves to get killed, you know. But he was a man's man, and he went and did what he had to do. You got to respect him just for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gangster or no gangster, he knew he was going to his death, and for him to face it like that, probably without any fear, the guy was just, it's quite remarkable, isn't it, really? And there's other examples of that as well. There was a guy called Johnny Key Simone. Sammy the Bull Gravano tells a story about him, and he was a Philadelphia guy as well. He was trying to take over the family, in the early 80s, and Sammy was sent up there to take him out, and they abducted him, and he was in the back of the van, and he knew what he was going to get killed, and he had the chance to alert authorities at one point when they were going through some sort of checkpoint, and he didn't say anything, because he was a gangster through and through.
Yep, and that's what it is, and that's why they go. It's not. I wasn't in a position like that, well, with the other family. At any time, I could have went down to Philly, thinking everything was okay, and then it could have been lights out.
Sure.
You just don't know.
Sure. So Philadelphia is a fascinating city with fascinating characters in the mob life, and one of those was Ron Previty. Did you tell us about Ron Previty? Did you ever meet him? What were your interactions with him? What were your first impressions of Ron Previty?
First impression, I didn't like him at all. I didn't like Ronnie. We were the first time I met him, we went down, I think it was Joey Molino's uncle's house. We were at a pool down there. It was a pool party, and they invited me down. I believe even my wife was at that party. It was a family thing. Ronnie came. That's the first time I met him. He was trying to push a truckload of shrimp on me and whatever else, I just got a bad feeling from him. This is what we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
Met him again. I was proposed at that time. I met him again after I got made and officially introduced to him. I don't know at that point, and I don't know why Joey made him a capo in the family, but he had no crew. Then I get a phone call, Ronnie's got a guy up in Boston, he's having a problem. Can you help him out? So Ronnie comes up, introduces me to this Mike McGowan. At the time, we called him Mike, Irish Mike. And I met him down in a restaurant near his office on Milk Street in Boston. And I told him, I says, you're with Ronnie, you have any problems, just tell them you're with the Luisi family. And these people will back up. That's the first time I had the interaction that Ronnie had me sent with an FBI agent. I didn't like Ronnie. I didn't really care too much for Mike. Although I ended up later I ended up liking Mike. I'm not going to lie to you, McGowan.
Sure.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
Well, we know that Ron Previty was an ex-police officer. Were they aware that he was actually an ex-police officer when they brought him into the fold, or?
Of course, how could they not know that?
Sure.
That's ridiculous. You can't, it's just amazing. He was a bad cop. He broke that oath. What makes you think he was going to keep this one?
Sure. Sure.
Ron Previty was garbage. Well, garbage in the life. I knew he was full of shit. Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Swear on your show.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I just didn't like the guy. And they kept trying to push swag on me and watches and this thing and that thing. And to me, it just felt like a setup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I told my guys to beware. Actually, Irish Mike, my cousins were May guys too. We straightened them out. He was supposed to work with one of my cousins, not be able to talk with me. Obviously, I was the boss up there, But drugs got involved in the equation. And, a lot of my guys didn't want nothing to do with drugs, and I wasn't going to endanger my cousin when I felt that, or one of my guys, when I felt this is probably a bad deal. But I was at a point with Philadelphia that I either had to go along with what Joey wanted, or there might have been a problem, if you understand.
Sure.
So at that point, with Ronnie coming around, I delayed the whatever he wanted to do, I just kept pushing it off. We call it palling him off. Yeah. And I did that for several months. And then Joey got involved. And I ended up helping Ronnie. Because I went down a few times and I knew he was helping Joey. I said, maybe he is on the up and up. Let me do it. And I ended up falling into a trap. But from day one, I felt that there was a bad deal.
Sure.
I didn't trust Ronnie. Yeah.
The thing is with Ron Previty, The man was so large that it would probably be impossible to pat the guy down, right?
Well, he came up to a meeting, and this is the day I had to make the decision. I went and did a walk and talk with him about the drugs. And Mike McGowan was in a coffee shop, probably shitting himself. And I did a walk and talk with Ronnie, and the direction we were going, my other cousin had a coffee shop. I was going to pull him in there and let him get undressed because I didn't trust him.
Wow.
But now here's the problem. If I get undressed and find a liar, I can't clip him. I have to let him go. That's going to be an issue now. I'm not a fool. I'm not going to fight the government. The second thing, if he didn't have a wire on, he would have ran back to Joey.
Sure.
And I did that to one of Joey's capos.
Right.
That's disrespectful.
Wow.
You understand the situation I was in? So I ended up making the decision to go along with it. Keep amends with Joey and myself, and they jammed me up. Ronnie jammed me up with an FBI agent.
Why would they have an ex-cop? I mean, didn't that send alarm bells ringing that this guy was an ex-cop? How did he manage to bypass that whole thing?
I wasn't down there when Ronnie got made. Ronnie was with Stanford. Stanford's the guy that made him.
Sure.
They could see more of a fool that Stanford is. And a lot of it was greed with these old zips. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
They could control everybody. They're on top of everything. And that was Stanford's mistake. And it ended up falling on Joey's lap. That's what happens.
So when you're in your mob life, you were involved in the drug side of things. How did that come about? And how did you manage to stay one step ahead of the game for when it was going good? How did you manage to get a good run with that?
Well, what happened there is when I came back in 1990 from the vineyard, I told you, I lost all my property, money, everything was gone. I came home in a minivan that they were repossessing with 2 kids. I had $100 in my pocket. The only thing I knew was to go back on the street. When I'm on the street, I'm seeing all these young guys, they're driving Cadillacs, wearing nice clothes, and and I started investing. Where's all this money? What are they doing? What are they bookmakers? What are they doing? At that time, they took a lot of the wise guys away. So I'm looking to put my hand in these people's pockets. And ultimately, I come to find out it was all about the drugs. A lot of them were selling drugs. They were making money with the drugs. And I seen cocaine at that time as just a social thing. I didn't realize the danger of it. So I got involved with the drug business. So we're shaking some of them down. And I got an opportunity. I started hooked up with a few people, and I started selling kilos. So in a few years, I became a millionaire again. I had money again. It was fast. And that was it. And what happened, I was very careful with my safe houses and everything. If someone got pinched, even if they didn't know where the safe hole was, but they knew certain people, I would change up my whole operation. So if the feds, the DA are looking at this certain guy, he's out of the equation now. So I was always trying to stay a step ahead of them. And that's what I was doing. And all the kilos and everything that we did, I never got caught with anything.
Sure.
Never. They had nothing on me until Ronnie, Previty.
Did you ever think about telling any of your mob friends about this, or would that have been seen as a sign of weakness?
No.
Yeah.
The only one I told about this, and actually he's over here, my co-host Polly.
Sure.
And he's the only one I told about it at the time because he's the only one I trusted. A funny story, after that happened, I'm a cowboy, mate guy running my crew. Myself and Georgie Borghese, we go down to Florida with our families. You know who Georgie is?
Yeah.
Capo, boss of the film. And I'm wearing a Jesus t-shirt. Went from up to my neck down past my belly button. Big picture of Jesus. He said, "What's this, Bobby?" I said, nah, I had a little thing. My wife wanted me the shirt. I'm just going to humor I'm wearing the shirt, you know. And then I told Georgie a few little things that were on my mind because Georgie, in a way, was very religious. And I felt I could talk to him about that. But I didn't tell him what happened and how I was
Sure.
feeling.
Mm.
I would never do that. I'm not stupid,
Sure.
you know, because that's a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was careful. They came and got me at my house. They were gentlemen defense, cuffed me up. And there was a long stairway to get up to my house. I was like in a cliff. Long
Right.
stairway to get down. And I'm walking and they got me to the street. And I feel something break off my shoulders, like a yoke.
Sure.
And I just felt it just went away. And I started to smile. And I felt like it's over. I can't explain the feeling I had. But I had a feeling of peace. They put me in the car. I was smiling.
Sure.
I knew the trouble I was in.
Mm.
But I was smiling when I got in the car. You know, and, you know, that's what ends up happening, I guess. He said, all your friends are telling on you. They got you cold this time. They're laughing about it up there. You're gone. He says, you know, you should talk to them. I said, I'll never do that. I'm not going to talk to these people. You know, I mean, I'm here, got my crew, put my family together. I said, I'm never going to talk to them. So like 2 weeks went by and my stomach's turning. You know, I felt betrayed by everybody. Joey just unwittingly sent the rat into me, and an FBI agent. The guys in Boston were ratting on me, guys that we killed together, we did everything together, and now I'm their pincushion. So 2 weeks later, we come in. I said, yeah, tell them I'm gonna go talk with them. And that's why I went in.
Sure.
Now, if I had murdered someone and got caught on my own, that's my problem. I would have never told on anybody. I would have never talked to them. I never did tell on anybody. If everybody knows my case, I ended up going to trial twice on my own case. I didn't help the government. And long story short, like I said, if I kill somebody and I got caught, that's on me, not nobody else. But when guys that I was loyal to and love were lining up against me to tell on me so they could get out, I couldn't handle that.
Sure. Sure.
And that's why I did what I did. Now, let me tell you, that's still not an excuse in the life. Joey Molina was facing murder charges. He went to trial. He stood strong. All these other guys, look at Vic Camuso, you know, look at Nicky Scarfo, all these guys. We were talking about another guy. You're talking guys like Sonny Black that lived a life, that went to his death knowingly, you know. Those were men. What happened to me is I found Christ. People say it's a cop-out. You want to know something? I don't care. I feel that I'm saved. I'm back with my family, and I got out of prison. So that's where I am with it.
So it kind of reminds me a little bit of Joe Messino, because he was the boss of the Bonanno family.
I was with all those guys, yeah.
Sure. And no one would have ever thought that Joe Messino would eventually flip when everything came down. But everyone started flipping on him. So he had no choice in the end, because he was actually facing death penalty. And so he had no choice, and he decided to flip. But this was for the audience, Joe Messina was a good friend of Gotti's. They all kind of grew up together, and he was like stone cold.
I mean, stone cold killer.
Yeah.
See, there's a lot of psychology in this life. The old timers taught me that. You know, maybe that put me a little ahead of everybody. I don't know. But, there's a point, I think people just get this illusion with the life like I did. When they say, I just don't want this no more. Joe built a family. We know what happened with the Captains and what Joe went through and a lot of those Bonanno guys. And you're right, I was with those guys that flipped on them. I know a few of them. It's sad to see that a guy like Joe did something like that, because this is what started ruining the life, you know. But again, what choice did Joe have? And I think at that point, he's an older guy. He's disillusioned. He knows he's never getting out of prison. I think he just had enough. I think a lot of guys are feeling that now. You get disillusioned with the life. When you hit a certain plateau in that life, I'm not talking a banging around street guy, maybe even did a few murder. I'm not talking a guy like, I'm talking a guy in position, in administration, and a man in power. The deeper you get into that life, the more corruption you see inside of it.
Sure.
That there is no loyalty and honor. The only crew that I've seen, and I'm still going to say this till this day, is the Philly crew. They grew up together. They were close friends since childhood. There's a love there and a connection that you're not going to break. But look at all the other families. You never know who's going to flip.
Sure.
You never know who's going to do what. You know?
Sure.
And it's sad. But this is what the life came to. You know, it's really close. I mean, some of the stuff, you know, with New York and the involvements and everything, but the everyday life that they portray on the show is very good. Actually, one of my childhood friends, David, I don't want to say his last name. He may not want me to. Still one of my closest friends. His brother-in-law was actually the writer on the show.
Right.
One of the main writers on the show.
Okay. Yeah.
And his brother. And, you know, he's got a lot of Boston influences in that show. Actually, one of the characters, Gigi, that was played by John Fiore.
Yeah, Gigi. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a guy that we were actually in law with up there. You know, so he kept intermingling New York and Boston together. I think it was very realistic what was going on, the everyday life of the family, the bada bing, the whole thing. The card games, the gambling, the extortion. That's probably the closest thing you're going to get.
Sure.
In the old time neighborhood, the closest thing you're going to get is the Bronx deal with Sonny.
Right.
If you can understand them, that's
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If Joey Merlino was in a war with Tony Soprano, who would win?
Joey Molina.
Why?
Why? That's a bad crew down there. Okay. And listen, these guys down in Philly with Joey's crew, I know their capability. You know?
Sure.
So if there was a problem with the Jersey family, and I'm gonna say the Cavalcanti,
yeah,
I think Joey would have squashed that right away.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No one has it together like Joey does.
Right.
When it comes to that. They have no fear, and these guys will do what they got to do.
Sure.
So if I was going to put them on a wall level, even with Tony Soprano's crew with Paulie Walnuts.
Sure. Yeah.
I know Tony personally.
I mean, you got to remember that Paulie Walnuts has been in a couple of wars himself, you know. So.
Paulie's a street guy. I mean, he was a street guy. It was great. I did a show with Paulie. He with Tony.
Tony Sirico, yeah. Tony Sirico, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Tony Sirico was a street guy, right? He was a
street guy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Forgot about it. Yeah.
So he's playing himself.
Yeah, that's just what he's doing. Yeah. That's just what he was doing. That's why he was so good at it. Yeah.
Sure. So listen, Bobby, there's been a lot of famous people hailing from Philadelphia. In terms of boxing, Rocky Balboa was one of them. I mean, there's rumors that Rocky Balboa was controlled by Angelo Bruno. How much truth is there to that?
That I don't know. That I don't know. You're talking about when they were making the movie?
I'm talking about the real Rocky Balboa.
Who was the real Rocky Balboa?
Uh, I don't know. I thought you could shed some light on that.
No, I can't. But let
No?
me tell you, if there was a boxer out of Philly, Angelo was involved in it.
Oh,
That
really?
I can tell you. Yeah.
Okay. Because we know for sure that Old Man Bacala was one of Rocky's cornermen. So that's
Yeah.
that's the reason that I'm going down that route.
hmm Yeah. But
Okay.
who did they make the movie after? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Where that all
Okay.
came from.
All right. Okay. Um, so going back to Sopranos, Tony Soprano, obviously, he was seeing a therapist. In your life, in the mob, in the real world, how would that go down if you actually told your crew you're seeing a therapist? I'm thinking that's a big no-no, right? Is that correct?
Any sign of weakness is a big no-no. But I was diagnosed with certain things. I should have been on pills myself. I have my own problems. Um, I didn't find it a weakness. If someone in my crew had a problem and had to do that, I didn't find that. There's a lot of people today that have problems, and I'd rather them turn to a doctor than try to help themselves and self-medicate on the street. And that's what I was seeing a lot out there, realizing that they had other underlying issues that they needed help for. But for a mob boss to be going and talking with a psychiatrist once a week, no.
Sure,
You don't know what's going to break down in that conversation. You can't trust it. You can't take that chance.
sure,
Totally should have
sure,
unclipped.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, I'm sure this wouldn't happen in real life, or if it did, you definitely wouldn't tell your crew or anyone in that
No,
life, right?
no.
We know that the mob is still in operation. Maybe not in the way that it was in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, but tell me about what you think of the mob now.
Well, one of the movies I watched, I don't know, Once Upon a Time in America, they made a statement, America needs this cancer right now because the Italians helped build, like I've heard other people, Italians built the unions, built the cities, transportation. They did everything, the Italians. We got into everything. Well, they did. I'll say we, I'm a May guy, was a May guy, But I think that it's still a cancer. It's still there. When cancer is in remission, it doesn't mean that it left your body. It just means that it's stabilized, right?
It's being controlled, yeah.
It's being controlled. And that's what I'm seeing right now, is being
Sure,
controlled. Does that
sure.
make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, some might argue that it's actually gone back to its roots, more underground, more
Well,
clandestine.
yes, that's what they're doing. But here, there's something you have to remember about it. When the Italians came over here in the late 1800s and the Black Hand was here, when the Italians originally came, they were treated terrible here. A lot of bad names we were called, Breeze, Spick, Walk, whatever, the N word. And, the mob is actually what brought the Italians out of that. They got them more respect because they started to get into everything, get into politics, get into judges, get everything done. They were important in this country for the Italians at that time. A lot of times good things turn into bad things eventually, But what I could say about it again, it's in remission, but it's still there and it's never going to be cut out. They just can't cut it out. And I think today's mob is, like you said, they're more underground. No one wants to know, when we were on the street, I wanted everybody to know who I was. You're like a celebrity. But
Sure,
nowadays, no. They're staying undercover. They're not hanging around. They're not in the social clubs. It's a different mob now. Now, I'm not
sure.
talking directly for New York because it's so big over there with so many families.
Mm.
But I'm talking like, the smaller families. Everything's got to be more undercover because you can't trust nobody.
Sure. I mean, the problem is as well, you got social media on top of that. I mean,
Yeah.
the last thing that you want is being, in a making ceremony, and the last thing that you want is someone taking selfies and put them on Instagram, right?
Right, yeah, that would be the last thing. It's funny because, when I went to prison, we had a beeper and a flip phone, the flip phones and all that were popular then.
Right.
We had to put everything in the bathroom, all electronics, everything had to go away. The fan went on the bathroom, shut the door. No one was allowed to have any electronics on them. I have a friend that got made in the Genovese family. He's a close friend of mine. They actually, you had to strip down and put a bathrobe on.
Right.
That's the precautions they were taking,
Sure.
So what kind of life is that now if you have to do that? What kind of honor is it?
Sure.
What type of
Sure.
loyalty in life? When I say it's never going to be the same, we're never going to be in the unions again like before. We're never going to have that political power. We're never going to have the politicians and the judges in our pockets. And it's not going to be the same mob. And they're going to go deep undercover if they want to survive. There's so much intelligence out there with the DEA, the FBI, Homeland Security, this thing, that thing. How long are you going to last today? How long?
Well, it's almost impossible to operate with all big tech and everything being tracked and monitored. I mean, there's even talk about money being digitized, currency being digitized. I mean, this is surely going to destroy the mob, no?
Oh, absolutely. It's a cash business, my friend. It's a cash business. And too, the Italians over the years progress more and more as a society and more into society. These young kids are really not looking to be in that life. I said it before. It's sad to say, but a young guy could go out, make 4, 5, 6,000 a week selling drugs. Why is he going to be a gangster?
Sure.
It's just try to go out there and recruit guys to be bookmakers today and loan sharks. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, it's just going to be a different mob now. They're going to find different ways.
Also,
but they reinvent themselves slowly.
Sure. And I think with the times, the current times, I'm sure the mob has had to adapt to some extent. I mean, with the global pandemic, I mean, things like kissing each other on the cheek and things like that, that's a complete no-no, right? I mean,
no, we still do that. We still do that.
Really?
When I see my friends, we do that. We hug, we kiss.
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's just, that's a respect thing when someone comes up and does that with me. Sure. We still do that. I was out the other night with some friends, and some other friends walked in, and first thing they did was want to come up, give me a hug, kiss on the cheek. It's a sign of respect.
Sure.
Even though I'm not in that life anymore, there's still a lot of people, I'm back in Boston, in my neighborhoods, and there's still a lot of people that, they still want to respect and,
Sure. And things like, I mean, let's say, for example, in social clubs, do you think there's social distancing happening there? Do you think
social clubs?
Yeah. Well, if there are any social clubs.
Yeah. Well, there's still some left in the neighborhoods. I mean, there's still social clubs and Sons of Italy clubs. No, they're on top of each other in there. No one cares about that.
Do you think they wear masks and things like that, or is that not something that a man of honor would do?
What's that?
Wear masks, because of the whole pandemic situation.
I would if I was a boss. I mean, I just got COVID.
Oh, right. Okay.
I got COVID in April. I went and got the shot, and the next day I got sick after the first shot.
Oh, wow.
I had a full blown, and I have underlying conditions.
Right.
And from April, I'm still sick. I'm one of those long-term 22%.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm having that right now. I'm still having problems with that.
Oh, wow.
They dropped all the mask mandates here now. Boston is starting again next week because I live right outside of Boston.
Right.
Starting next week, they got to wear masks again. So if you want to go in a restaurant, you got to put a mask on.
Sure.
But if anybody thinks that these guys are wearing them in the social clubs,
no, is that definitely not a good move? Is that a sign of weakness, possibly?
Listen, if an older guy came in the club and they were playing cards and he put a mask on, he wants to protect, that's all right. You know what I mean? But
I'm just genuinely curious to see how the mob has actually adapted to these new pandemic times. I mean, I could imagine having a sit down group of mobsters with masks on and socially distanced.
That would be funny.
Like...
I should do a skit on that, Paul. That would be good.
You've been involved, and obviously the people that you've been around have been involved in violence and hurting people, unfortunately. But obviously now you're a reformed character, etc. But back in the days, we've got films like Goodfellas, etc. In Goodfellas, Jimmy Burke, he strangles Maury. I don't know if you remember the film, but Maury.
I think I would have strangled Maury, but go ahead. Yeah.
He strangled Maury with a telephone wire.
Mm-hmm.
And like in Sopranos, there's a part in Sopranos where Paulie Walnut starts using a counterbell to start attacking this Jewish hotelier.
Yeah, I remember that.
So what's your experiences in using innovative ways to hurt people, like using props like telephone wires or a bell or something, or a banana or something, I don't know, or a plate, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you a story.
Go on.
You want to hear a story?
Sure, yeah, go on, yeah.
I had a guy with me, Bobby Lamaki, lived down in Springfield, Massachusetts. That end of town, the Genovese down there. You know, they're a little away from Boston. And I went down to a party down there, and his wife called him from a bar room down the street. I don't know, something happened in there. We don't know how to something happened. So we all go rushing down there, and we go in there, and there's like an 80-foot bar in this club, like oval at the ends on both sides. And he starts arguing with the bartender. They knew each other, you know. And long story short, I'm looking for the way to get in. I'm not going to jump over the bar. So I picked up a glass ashtray. I'd say it weighed about 5 pounds. I picked it up and I flung it at the guy, and it hit him in the side of the head. And he did like one of those, like gonna go down. And I had no problem doing that. And if there's an object that I have to grab, a cup, well, anything I gotta do to defend myself or hurt somebody, that's what I'll do. But that ashtray, that's a true story. And the poor kid, I think he went deaf in that ear.
Oh, right.
Wow. Yeah, that was sad. I didn't mean to hurt that. But, you know, but listen, this is things that we do.
Sure.
I was in Chinatown one night, and I got in a fight with, I don't know, ended up being like 10 guys. There was a few of us. And I was actually getting hit in the face with urns, you know, the Chinese tea.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were whacking me in the face with them, trying to knock me out, put me down. So, listen, whatever's available, boom. And if it's a banana, it's a banana.
Sure, yeah, exactly. For you, what's your all-time favorite mob movie series, and why? Why is that?
Well, like I said before, my favorite mob series, definitely The Sopranos, because I felt it was more like my life. I was like Tony, you know, in my life. Even the family was the same. I had the older daughter with the son. My wife was blonde, although she was Irish, but she was blonde. You know, we had the homes, you know, everything that was around Tony was around me, the crew, the whole thing, you know. My favorite mob movie is Bronx Tale, because I just love the way that Chaz Palmintero played Sonny in that movie. That was spot on. That's what a true copper was like.
Sure.
You know, and respected and murder, whatever he had to do. And I think that's probably one of my favorite ones, is the Bronx Tale. But of course, the classic of all times is The Godfather. You know?
The Godfather is an absolute classic, but it's funny in a way that there's some things that are completely quite far from reality in terms of The Godfather in real life. I mean, Tom Hagen being a consigliere and not being Italian, that's not real. But in terms of what they knew back then about them, it was quite impressive. You know?
Yeah.
And even the actual making of that movie, they had to get permission from Colombo family members, and Joe Colombo himself had to, there's rumors of him even actually looking through the script and making sure there's no mention of the word mafia in the script. So that just goes to show how much power they had in New York at that time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So I want to play a little game of expressions. So I would read out a scenario to you, and you would give me a facial expression for that scenario. What face you would pull in that scenario? Would you be willing to play along?
I'll try. I'll try.
Yeah. Okay. Imagine you're back in your gangster days. Okay. So let me read out the first one. So at a family dinner, your uncle tells you that you would never make, or you would never have the makings of a varsity athlete.
Well, you know, he would have been right about that. So
Okay.
I don't know what kind of face I would have made.
I thought the first face that you were pulling would be the actual face.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay. So I'll read the second one out to you.
Yeah.
So you're away on a business trip, and you found out that the community priest spent the night at your house alone with your wife.
Hmm.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That looks quite dangerous. That's quite a scary face, I must say. Okay, so the third one I got is you borrow $50,000 from a fellow mobster, and a week later they are whacked.
Oh, I would be happy.
Yeah.
You mean he got it? Yeah, that's good. I'm even.
Yep. $100,000.
Oh, even better. Yeah.
$250,000.
Make you. I'd be jumping up for joy.
Okay. You found out that Donald Trump will be running in the next election. Okay. An interesting expression that you've got there. Okay.
Yeah. I think that says it all, right?
Right. Absolutely. You're in the queue at your local Walmart.
I'm in the what?
You're in the queue at your local Walmart.
The queue is what?
The queue, like you're waiting to pay at the till.
Oh, the checkout line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's your queuing face?
Yeah, because I want to stab everybody in line. Oh, you're gonna see me in there. You got no idea.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
And the final one, someone has vandalized a statue of Christopher Columbus.
What?
Someone has vandalized a statue of Christopher Columbus.
Well, you know, listen, enough with this fucking bullshit with your questions. I've been sitting here for a fucking hour and a half. Where are we going with this stuff? Is this going to end? Or are we going to keep going with this bullshit? Tell me what's happening, my friend.